Raising a family requires serious energy. Quaker Protein instant oatmeal, bars, and granola can help with moments like carrying a science project the size of a small car. Help bring out the good in your family with Quaker Protein. Quaker, bring out the good.
Floating out towards outer space, my body's cold, my mind is laced with thoughts of you and how you saved me. When I feel out of hope, you hold on to me very close and reassure me that everything will be okay. As we float through the atmosphere, I feel as though I have no fear because you saved me. Floating out towards outer space, my body's cold, my mind is laced with thoughts of you and how you saved me.
My day kicks off with a refreshing Celsius energy drink, then straight to the
Hi. I'm like sitting here going, did I unmute my mic? Nope, of course not. Hello. So today you get to see my Mimikyu plushie. Today um today starts Science Friday. What Science Friday is actually it's just me using my education. So maybe only one person will ever come to these. Don't care. Do care. Obviously, I'm a creature who's deeply insecure and needs praise at all times, but don't care. um, because right now we live in a country that's afraid of science and knowledge in every capacity. I am choosing to do the first set of these on common disagreements in science and where I stand, so that in the future, if someone goes, evolution isn't real, I can say, hit exclamation point evolution, and you will be given a VOD. And that will be that. Which means we're going to start with what is called Hildy's Hot Takes. Today, I was supposed to stream earlier today, by the way, and I didn't. And the reason I didn't was because Food Stamps wanted to re-go over what Twitch was. They were like, you know, the person who interviewed you the last time understood what this is, but I don't. Can we talk about it? And I was like, do your grandkids watch people play video games? And she was like, yes. And I was like, I do that. And the sweet old lady was like, oh, is that successful for you? And I was like, I make 30 cents an hour. So it actually doesn't completely count for food stamps. I have to continue to do work search because you have to make $940 a month for it to count for food stamps. I was like, only the big people. It's like you make $200 a month and then you make $1,000. That's it. There's nobody on Twitch makes between 200 and 1,000. So point is, I had a lovely conversation with a woman named Deborah who explained to me that I still get food stamps and it's fine. And that apparently I'm very young at heart. Dun, 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 dun. So, what I would have played, by the way, would have either been House of Legacy or Songs of Silence. But you see, My Steam account updated with a little game they call Icarus. And it's updated because a little person named Ferris bought it during the winter sale. We own Icarus, Victor. This is the first time ever a big game that I knew about, that I was certain I would never own for a whole year, just appeared in my lap. Oh, yeah. So, if we for some reason get done early, which this one is kind of short, so probably, I will be starting Icarus and I will be very happy. Point is, Science Friday is more of a lecture format. You'll notice that the channel rewards are different. That is because I'm going to be talking at you. And you're welcome to talk back, but I won't always be looking at chat. If you hear something funny, please quote it. Obviously, if you repeat something I say in chat, I usually understand that as you wanting to quote it. If you've got something funny to say, say it. I will get to it eventually. There is in the channel rewards, Hildy, it's an emergency. If you do not understand what I am saying, for ever what reason, you can spend your money on that. You'll notice it's kind of expensive overall. And Plant Facts is ludicrously expensive. It's because I've been a TA before, and if I get interrupted mid-lecture, I end up falling apart because I have ADHD, and I really would like to not fall apart. So we're going to try not to fall apart. The first Science Friday is about scientific controversies. Except they're not real. We're going to talk about science communication and how obviously I'm sure most of my followers have deduced that it's a giant sham, but I'm going to give you the science language behind it. And also, we're going to go over the scientific process, not the scientific method, because that's step one. The scientific method doesn't exist. Obviously, that's like a bombshell way to say it when it's really kind of a technicality. It's the scientific process. But it's an important distinction that I think we've got to start with. So, this was the non-copyright music we were listening to. The scientific process, as it were, is a lot more about come and come again than what we're given for the scientific method. Let's pull up the scientific method, as Google will tell us, and I'll point out where we have a problem. So, the scientific method: observation, ask question, research topic, form hypothesis, conduct experiment, analyze result, accept or reject, and then communicate. These steps were taught to most people in the 90s and are still taught in less science-oriented schools. They have the impression that this is the order you must go and that this is exactly how much, these are the exact steps you need to take. Nothing in the real world works as programmed as it should. Furthermore, you very rarely make a traditional hypothesis. What's a hypothesis? Let's make one. From observation of my general viewer trends, when I hit my big depression, I lost about 4 viewers an hour. I averaged 4.5 to 5, and now I'm averaging 3.3. Because this is kind of a niche stream for me, I think that I will have 2.9 viewers per hour. I predict that it will be because science and technology is not necessarily a Friday night gig. In that hypothesis, we had an observation. Notice I already analyzed and interpreted data. We analyze, interpret data, then I made an observation, then I made a hypothesis, and then I predicted what it would be. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes that's all we do. When you say method, it implies that you have to continue, or that there's a conclusion to be found. Furthermore, method suggests that there's a right or a wrong, right? Often people say, oh, prove or deny hypothesis, return to zero. That's in mathematics. In statistics, you can literally use a zero or a beta to indicate accepted hypothesis or not accepted hypothesis. We will get into statistics later on. But in actual scientific work, hypotheses are literally fancy pants guesses. They mean nothing until you choose to publish a result. The process of developing a hypothesis often repeats data, nature, predict, data, nature many, many, many times. So that by the time you actually get to a scientific experiment, you've already second-guessed yourself 14 or 15 times. Science is expensive, and very rarely are experiments conducted unless they have a pretty good idea that they're going to, I wouldn't say right, but support their hypothesis. And when they don't support their hypothesis, they do not lie about it. Here's the National Library of Medicine. The National Library of Medicine is one of the only places you should be reading about medical information. You will find in the National Library of Medicine that almost everything that is controversial is not. How do I get from the scientific process to disagreements not being valid? Step one is that so very often we consider solid science the hypothesis. For example, autism causes vaccines. That is a hypothesis. However, because the hypothesis was put out in a paper, people took it as fact. For something to be a theory in science, it means that over thousands, often over hundreds of years, but at least over thousands of experiments, the same result happened. You understand that gravity is not a theory yet? I throw my pencil, it hits the ground. That's not taken for granted. There's still a presumption that we could be wrong because we just found the gravitron 3 years ago. A hypothesis is a guess. It's not even a prediction. In fact, autism causes vaccines is a bad hypothesis. I used to grade science papers and tell people that is not a hypothesis. A hypothesis is because something something, then something something. Or if something something, then something something. So, because autism cases have risen simultaneously with vaccinations, I predict I will discover that autism is affected by vaccination. Hypotheses are not arguments. every controversial topic currently put out in front of the masses is a pair of hypotheses. And they're arguing whether which one is true. It could be neither. It could be both. There's absolutely no point in the scientific process that says you stop at hypothesis and publish it. Public controversies with the science component right here. We're going to go through this paper a little bit. Although the nature of science-related public controversies. Although the public has a generally positive attitude towards science and scientists, which is wrong, you're very, very, very blessedly optimistic, my friend. Specific contentious issues with the science component often become controversial. Some of that public controversy stems from the fact that the science itself is inconclusive, and some from a disconnect between what science shows and either long-held common sense perceptions or deeply held moral, ethical, or social values. Often the moral, ethical, or social implications of using science to develop or deploy a technology or to make a particular decision can be more contentious than the scientific findings themselves. Public debate about the issues among the scientific community, policymakers, and citizens can help uncover common ground among people holding diverse sets of values. Although this is not always the case, clear information from science can enable people to make more informed choices. When public controversies with a science component result from uncertainty, such as that which arises from either an inconclusive set of scientific findings or disagreements within the scientific community on how to interpret the results or how the results should be communicated. Science, again, has no controversies. Science has healthy disagreements. If you want scientists to always get along, then you also don't want to know why the sky is blue. You don't want to know why apples fall, and you certainly don't want to know that the Earth is round. The majority of major scientific discoveries have happened because two scientists bickered over the data across a table. Once they finished bickering, they then went and tried it again. If you stop at this is how I think the data should be interpreted and report it, you're not a scientist. You're irresponsible. As discussed in Chapter 2, communicating science is almost always a complex task, in part because scientific information and its implications are understood, perceived, and interpreted differently by different individuals, social groups, communities, and decision-making bodies. This phenomenon isn't unique to science, but it is unique in that science should not be interpreted differently. Science is hard. It's rock. There are words and they mean something and they mean that thing. Scientists equal cat images. Absolutely. But these words have definitions and they are consistently used in that context. If you use the wrong word, you don't mean the same thing. Period. We've developed a sense that everything should be flexible. Terms like evolution are not flexible. They have a meaning. That is the meaning. The primary issue with meanings being unclear is that we keep science from poor people, from black people, from gay people, from anybody who is not white and male. At the core, scientific controversies come down to our inability to allow people to use language in the way they see fit but to correct them in order to use proper terms so it is understood. Imagine, if you will, I decided to ask somebody out. I'm going to ask out Horatio, my meow meow. If I went up to him and said, "Can we go on a date?" And then when we were on the date, I said, "Hello." I said, "It's not real," or "This isn't romantic." How many would feel that I had used date in the wrong context? Somehow it's allowed that we use science that way because we don't allow science to be used in any context but itself. When you see science-related controversies, quote unquote, debated, what you're seeing is the scientific process. You're not seeing a controversy. You are seeing two people who have interpreted the data differently, debating. There are, of course, several debates that are simply people who don't want you to believe the science because they don't like it. There are many scientists who don't like the results of their work. One of my very favorite scientists, Barbara McClintock, secretly discovered cancer. Here's how it happened. Barbara McClintock, Our Lady of the Corn. Our precious, precious Lady of the Corn, who studied the same. Hi, Arcane. Welcome to Science Friday. Who studied the same species of corn her entire life. You're hearing a Hildy hot take. So Science Friday will typically be more educational in constructing ways so that science can be more communicative and teaching what I learned over thousands of dollars of student debt. However, I want to be able to have somebody hit exclamation point evolution and get a VOD rather than have them tell me evolution doesn't exist in the middle of a Science Friday. So we're doing a few like that. So Barbara McClintock, she is one of 3 women to have won the Nobel Prize solo. When she was in her 40s, she studied ZMAs and was looking at its genetics because during the 40s was when we were really obsessed with DNA. Like, people are losing their shit. Walker or whatever, DNA scientists, who are these? I forget his name. Watson, Crick, Franklin, and Wilkins, who are liars. We'll talk about that later. They had revealed the state of DNA, or the shape of it. Barbara McClintock, Barbara McClintock, while studying corn, noticed something called a transposon. This is what we call a selfish gene. It basically jumps from one part of the DNA to the other to copy itself because it loves itself. It's narcissism. It's Trump. And so the Trump gene turns out is one of the main reasons that cancer happens. Cancer being just when a cell overduplicates or underduplicates. Too many of one or too little of another. Regulation process goes off. It becomes it gets through all of the crazy gatekeepers, and suddenly you've got cancer. Barbara went to the men surrounding her and said, "Hey, I think my data shows that, that cancer does this thing. I think we should look at it." And the men said, and so she didn't tell anybody for 40 years. Then in 1983, Our Lady of the Corn, Barbara McClintock, decides to publish a paper that says cancer is definitely affected by transposons. Same year, Nobel Peace Prize. Instead of having a debate about why the information they didn't believe, they discounted her, and so she took her information and took her toys and left the playground. A lot can argue that, that's fair, right? Why should you force yourself to prove remove yourself if you are femme, but that is part of the systematic microaggressions that exist in science. If you are not white and you speak with an accent other than English, or other than a European accent, I should say, or you are from the South, or you like to speak with fucks, or you use analogies like cats. I love to teach science in cats. You are no longer valid in the scientific community. The idea of invalidating parts of the debates that happen in scientific controversy, quote unquote, is actually just dismantling the scientific process. We should have people claiming that vaccines cause autism so that we can laugh at them and we can interpret the data differently. We should not be breathlessly defending them because we're invalidating the studies of thousands of other scientists. And we should have people arguing that climate change isn't real so that we can again go through data that's been around since 1893 and we can publish that data. Then people, your average person who should be equipped to read that data, can see it for themselves. The controversies are not in science. They're in society. And by making them science's fault, we belittle science education. We make biology and life sciences a second-class citizen of science. And we further create an intelligence-afraid world. There is no debate about evolution from scientists. The debate about evolution from scientists is when you can tell a new species has arrived, not whether it exists. There is no debate about climate change from scientists. When there are debates about climate change in public, it is Bill Nye versus Mike Johnson or some asshole like that. This is the fault of consistent and poor science education, encouraged by the Mike Johnson who doesn't want climate change to exist. Again, it's not a controversy. The controversy is that they don't want you to know. Controversies involving science exist, like all controversies, in particular historical, geographic, and social contexts. The political commitments, culture, history, and religion of an audience will affect its perceptions of science in general and of the scientific information related to an issue in particular. National cultures, for example, have varying effects on how people interpret and react to science. Bhattacharjee, by the way, is one of my favorite people when talking about microaggressions in science. Arcane, write that name down. You're going to love some of their papers. This is why a scientific issue can be controversial in the United States, but not in Europe, as is the case with climate change, or the reverse, as is the case with in the introduction of genetically modified organisms in food. This phenomena is not confined to nation states. Organizations and civic institutions may include non-governmental groups, churches, sports teams involved in science-related controversies are not merely a collection of individuals, but have properties and dynamics of their own that affect how their members perceive information and make decisions. The diverse nature and origins of science-related controversies defy simple classification. This is the National Library of Medicine. As if I'd use anything but the best. It's specifically their Center for Biotechnology Information. so the conflicts are not over the science. They're over the beliefs, values, and interests of the organizations. Public, we're taught not to like conflict. We're trained not to like conflict. So if there's healthy conflict in science and people are disagreeing over the data, we sense uncertainty and it all must be false. The voices of organized interests and influential individuals who are not scientists, and we're about to get into what a scientist is. A lot of people are scientists. These people are not. They're amplified in public discourse, making it difficult for the state of the scientific evidence to become clearly known. This sentence has like a really interesting question, right? What makes someone an influential individual as opposed to a scientist? To be a scientist, you need 3 things. 1, a question, a curiosity, an observation that's weird to you. Why does my cat cry for attention and then jump off my lap immediately? Two, you need a guess, an educated guess. Because he doesn't want to be held, he actually wants us to do something, and he's trying to guide us somewhere. And 3, you need to be willing to be wrong. Many people are scientists. Almost everyone who's involved in a scientific controversy is not. They're not there to have their mind changed. They're not there to look at the data. They're not there to care about anything of the actual science. They are there for control. They are there to get what they need to get out of it. Science doesn't give you things. If science gave you things, we wouldn't be ourselves. I just gotta tell you, the human body is one of the worst biological instruments in the world. I wish we'd learned anything from plants, anything at all. We kill ourselves constantly. The fuck? Science does not sit there and tell you, oh, we don't actually kill ourselves. Look, we can do this and that. That's not what it's there for. Science is there to answer questions and check whether your guess is correct or not. And if you're not willing to let go of your guess, you're not a scientist, and that is the only thing you need. When science and emerging technologies challenge people's beliefs and threaten deeply held values, their attitudes towards science and scientific information can be affected. Across different science-related controversies, from climate change to GMOs to nanotechnology to genetic testing, people on opposite sides of the political spectrum who are demonstrably knowledgeable about the science may have opposite perceptions of or express support for the science, and less trust in the scientists who conduct it. The relationship between partisanship and perception or support also may be affected by people's patterns of media use. In addition, Cacciatore, what an unfortunate last name. In addition, information intended to persuade people to adopt particular practices or behaviors can have the opposite effect, and the effects of such messages can differ across groups, such as smoking warnings. Smoking warnings made Gen Z smoke more, because they're contrary little shits. In addition, the an example that they give is the effectiveness of various frames for advocating energy efficiency vary depending on a person's political ideology. This is actually Victor's day job, and he'll have people call looking for subsidies to get different heaters and things like that. And depending, he can almost always peg what they believe in. The Republicans are pissed that they have to go through the process. The Democrats are patient and just want to know what forms to fill out. Yes, Gen Z smokes more than the millennials. Part of it is because of Yule and because we didn't properly regulate tobacco replacements. But there really is a phenomena that Gen Z is just super contrary and super suicidal. And because so many of them were teenagers during COVID, they were so bored that they just were thrill seeking. These are all things that we've found contribute to smoking in Gen Z. So we have some examples. In Arcane, indeed. You're a little behind, so you'll see. I have a little bit of a latency because it keeps my stream more stable. So you are not wrong. Yeah, the assholes say it's unfair they're being left out of low income and believe energy saving is a scam, right? This stems from an idea of who I am is more important than what works. There is actual data that giving incentives to low-income people makes a more egalitarian world. Every dollar of food stamps generates $1.30 for the economy. This is data that's been studied again and again and again by scientists with different originating guesses, people from different backgrounds who sponsor different things. Yet, this is said to be bad science simply because it doesn't support an agenda. Thanks, PP. In most In a 2012 survey, for example, half of respondents were asked to answer true or false to the statement, human beings as we know them today developed from earlier species of animals. Among these respondents, 48% answered true. The other half of the respondents were asked to answer true or false to the statement, according to the theory of evolution, human beings as we know them today developed from earlier species of animals. Among these respondents, fully 74% answered true. Hildy, this is all obvious. What are we going to do about it? I'm a scientist and I have a guess that this will never get solved. Prove me wrong. This article has a couple of ideas, which we've already tried. Tailoring the message for understanding and persuasion to certain people. Engaging the public directly. However, we've tried that. This isn't, it's not successful. What? Just descending from Dagon as a resident of Innsmouth, count as Evo asking for evolving from an eldritch horror does indeed count as Evo. It's a very specific part of Evo Devo. It's called Cthulhunomics. It's very cutting edge. I'm surprised you know about it. Evo Devo, by the way, is evolutionary development. It is a whole part of science itself. A whole separate bit. The only thing we actually can do is stop allowing them to be controversies. And that is why Hildy's hot take is there are no science controversies. When something is not allowed to exist in your frame of reference, no. Evo Devo is, am I still buffering? Let me see. Ooh, so much instability right then. Evo Devo is evolutionary development. It's its own science. So what we can do is not allow them purchase. It certainly doesn't sound like a nice guy thing to do, right? I'm waiting for just a second for it to come back here. I'm not quite sure why it's being a shit right now. So when you give something space, you are inherently validating its existence. When you sit back and say, I will allow you to have intelligent design in my evolution discussion, you are allowing them the thought that intelligent design is a thing. You do not have to make room for false information. But Hildy, all that false news stuff is what got us here in the first place. There's a difference. You're not lying. There should be no controversy on climate change, so don't allow there to be one. If someone comes to you and says climate change isn't real, tell them they're wrong. Shut down the argument. It's not going to feel good. You're going to be in conflict. But science is conflict, my friends. If there's anything you pull away from this, science doesn't have controversies. It has conflict, healthy conflict, and sometimes punches in the face. If you're not willing to be wrong or to tell someone else that they are wrong, you're not a scientist. So tell them to shut up. It's not a controversy. The only controversy is which politician doesn't like it. Save the world, one hot take at a time. And this is Hildy's hot take number 1 on Science Friday number 1. Arcane's like, oh, I just have to hit people. Arcane, if you gotta punch somebody for telling you something totally fake, I'll bail you out of prison, but please. Honestly, walking away from the argument is just as intense and meaningful as saying, shut up. You will get told you're not being fair, you're not allowing open dialogue, it's not allowed on the other side. Have you ever had a flat earther come to you and really want to talk about the Earth being round? No, they're not willing to be incorrect. Science is not polite. Science isn't a human. Science is a process in which humans engage and animals engage. Why do you think that your cat, say you have a cat, like mine, who loves to get into human food, and one day, like my dumbass cat, he tried to eat the macaroni that was on the stove. Why do you think he never goes on the stove again? You might say, ah, getting your paw burned, that's not really an observation. Yeah, it is. That cat observed that eating food from the stovetop is unsafe. It doesn't matter if it's on or off. That is an unsafe place now. I predict I will be hurt if I go there. I have data to back that up. Science is a process that has been engaged with since anything that could make a decision existed. But it's not a person. It's not nice. It's not clean. It doesn't want you to feel good about yourself. It doesn't have a direction. There's nobody saying science is going to do something for you. All it's doing is being a thing that names the process of discovering the world, be it big or small. So don't allow things that aren't science to masquerade as such. Don't allow controversies to exist when really it's just a lot of yelling. Your world, you only get one shot to experience it. Don't waste your time making room for people who want you to experience it badly. That's what I got. That's Hildy's hot take number 1. There will be 6 of these. Next week's evolution is going to be great. We're going to talk in depth. Because I'm not just going to tell you about evolution. I'm going to show you why it's not a controversy. I will supply data. Again, the point of these being the Science Friday parts is that I want in the future, if someone shows up in this chat and is like, evolution isn't real, why are you bringing it up when you're talking about plants? I want to be able to say, hit exclamation point evolution. If you don't like what you hear, get out of my chat. I'm not going to make room for people saying. And that's why this is the one we started with. This will be every Friday from now until my perceivable death or job moves it to a different night. We did do really short. I know I promised I'd start Icarus, but frankly, I'm feeling real fired up. So I think I'm gonna like dump you guys back into Misroy's stream since he's still going. I never get to raid Misroy. This is gonna be great. I get to raid Misroy. Trust me, evolution will be a lot longer. to braid me, Roy. I'm so happy. Okay, when we get there, it'll be a braid. B-R-A-I-D. Thank you very much for coming. I know that this is probably something of an echo chamber for a lot of people, but that's not really the point. I just know a lot about science. Arcane, you're more than welcome to contribute. I may not always read it because I'm on a roll, but especially since your field is biology, I'd love for you to say some things. Anywho's it. The message will be a braid. Let us move along.